Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
We open our county board with our 2-minute public comment. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address the county board? Please come forward and state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Sam Sasser, and I live at 978 Gilmore Avenue, Winona. I'd like to thank you for allowing me to speak. I've been a commander for 7 years and presently hold the office of adjutant for Leon J. Wetzel, American Legion Post 9. I represent the Winona Regional Veterans Council, its members, and the commanders of Winona County Posts. We support Jerry Bigelow's plan to trade his current 2 vans to purchase a pickup with a lift to support the veterans of Winona County. We also request that funds donated for the vans and the drivers by Winona County citizens and veterans remain in Winona County to support Winona County veterans. I've spoken with a lot of Winona County citizens, veterans. The overwhelming response is to keep the funds for Winona County veterans in their direct support. We would request that those funds be donated to the American Legion Post 9 Veterans Relief Fund. This is a fund used to help and assist Winona County veterans, and we work through the Winona County Veterans Service Office. Again, thank you for the time and the opportunity to address you. I would like to invite each and every one of you to attend our Winona Regional Veterans Council meetings. I think you'd find it informative. And again, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, sir. When are those meetings?
They're usually on what would be the 4th Wednesday of the month. They're at 6 p.m. at the Winona Legion.
Okay.
And again, we'll invite you all to attend.
All right. Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to address the Winona County Board at this time? Is there anyone else? Okay, seeing nobody come, we will move on in our agenda. Approval of the county board meeting minutes from September 11th.
Move approval.
Second?
Motion made by Commissioner Jacob, seconded by Commissioner Pomeroy to approve the meeting minutes from September 11th. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Meeting minutes approved. Item 5 is normally acknowledge receipt and approved of committee minutes, but there are none at this time. Okay, so moving on into item 6, consent comments and approval of the agenda. Mr. Fritz?
Nothing.
Okay, Commissioner Grassi, Pomeroy, Olson,
Nothing for it.
Jacob?
One item.
One item? Okay.
I have some announcements at the end.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right, Commissioner Kavesi, announcements. All right. Attorney Solomon?
Nothing for me.
Okay. I would, and I know Mr. Klinger is here, I would like to pull item 7.2 just for a little more information so that the public knows what Mr. Klinger is proposing and help kick that off. So we could put that under 7.0, if that works.
8.01.
Or 8, I mean, sorry, 8.0, or 01, however. All right. So with that, I would entertain a motion to approve the amended agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Pomeroy, second by Commissioner Jacob to approve the amended agenda. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, approved. Mr. Fritz, if you'd read the consent business, please.
I'll do that. 7.1, approve monthly resolution. 7.2 has been pulled. 7.3, set public hearing date for 2019 truth in taxation and fee schedule as December 11, 2018. 7.4 is confirmed payment of disbursements. 7.5 is approved resolution for Southeastern Minnesota Multi-County Housing and Redevelopment Authority preliminary levy for fiscal year 2019. 7.6 is award bids for sale of 2 county vehicles. 7.7 is approved professional service proposal with BKV Group to develop county office building renovation study. And 7.8 is approved resolution for community assessment and reintegration care program and grant extension.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
We have a motion made by Commissioner Pomeroy, second by Commissioner Jacob to approve the consent business as presented. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Approved. Okay, going into general business. First item then would be 7.2, and Mr. Klinger is with us tonight, Emergency Management, and it's kind of a neat project that Mr. Klinger's maybe can tell us a little bit about and help give a little publicity to his efforts. So.
All right, good evening. What I'm talking about here is a program for educating third graders on preparedness and specifically like winter preparedness. I learned about this program through attending a regional emergency management meeting, and Blue Earth and LeSueur County have been doing this for over 10 years. And basically what the program is partnering with the schools, going into the schools and talking to the third grade class about safety in the winter, snowplow safety, things along those lines, and how to prepare, and then bringing in somebody from either the highway department or the local street department to talk a little bit more about snowplow safety, and then kind of do a small touch a truck thing, bring in a snowplow, usually work with the local law enforcement, bring in a police car just at the end for the kids to look at. And then also have them construct a small winter survival kit with small items of flashlights, survival blanket, hand warmers, and a little bit of food and things along those lines, and talk about why it's important to have supplies like that in case the power goes out, or make sure your parents have them in a vehicle in case there's some sort of emergency along the road. And talking to these other counties that have done it, they find the third graders are the best because they'll fill this bag with more information and stuff for the parents. And when they tell the third grade kids, go home and make sure your parents read this stuff, they'll do that, bothering the parents that they do it. I've talked a lot with Blue Earth County about how they do it, and they partner with some local businesses, specifically Walmart's one of their biggest sponsors, to get donations, some monetary, and some of the items for the kits are donated through these places. So I'm asking to be able to just seek donations from local businesses or organizations. I had a brief talk with the Goodview Activity Group. They're interested if this gets approved and probably donating towards this. So that's what we're looking to do, just to do some more public outreach and get more involved in the community.
Okay, good. Well, I read through it and I thought, yes, it is a good idea. It brings to mind that we should probably ask all third grade classes to attend a county board meeting so we can start the process of educating them. Because you're absolutely right. The grade school, that age, you give them something to take home and tell their parents about, and they're dedicated to the task. So I think it's a good thing. And so people know Blue Earth County, that's Mankato.
Yeah.
And the goal is to ultimately reach all third graders across the county?
That's the goal. And normally it would be in conjunction with Winter Weather Awareness Week. That's the beginning of November, so that's a little ambitious for this year. So I'm going to work on the fundraising and try to do it this winter, at least with a few schools, and then see how the fundraising goes and then branch out from there. I talked to the principal at Ridgeway about it. They were interested, just kind of in meetings and stuff and passing with teachers and stuff. But I wanted to make sure this step was done before I presented a program.
Sure. Okay. All right. Are there any other questions or comments?
Do you need a
about
motion or?
Thank you.
Yes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Olson, second by Commissioner Kavesi to approve the resolution for emergency management to seek donations for winter survival kits for kids program. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Approved. All right. Thank you, Mr. Klinger. All right. 8.1, receive presentation on creation and implementation of a district-wide veterans court. And who's going to spearhead this for us?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Gentlemen, I'm Judge Luning. I am chambered in Freeborn County. I'm part of the 3rd Judicial District. Sorry if I'm coming in too loud.
That's okay.
Let me give you a little bit of background. This is really more of an informational opportunity for us to tell you what we're doing as the 3rd Judicial District in creating a veterans court. First, I think it's important to understand a little bit of background about the Veterans Courts. They started approximately 10 years ago, roughly 2008, 2010 timeframe. And it started because veterans were coming back from combat, getting more and more involved in the court system. And in particular, a judge in Buffalo, New York, noted that he was not getting any real effective response from the veterans coming into his program, into his probationary program. They just weren't responding. And on one occasion, he was talking with one of them in court, and it just dawned on him that this person, if he could just be matched up with another veteran, maybe someone to act like we say in AA, a sponsor, maybe that person could help him along the way. And it was a huge success. The person turned right around, started to become very responsive to the probationary terms and requirements. And so this particular judge decided he was going to create a veterans court. And whenever a veteran came in front of him, he matched them up with a mentor, and it became a very successful program. Currently, there are over 400 veterans courts throughout the nation. The 3rd Judicial District does not have one yet. I will tell you, though, that back in about 2013, there started to be a discussion about creating a veterans court in our district. Of course, the problem is our district is made up of smaller counties, counties that don't have a great deal of veterans in each county. So with a specialty court, you need some volume. You need enough people involved to make it thrive. Frankly, Olmsted County is the only county that's big enough to probably fully man a veterans court. The county attorneys discussed this at several of their meetings, the 3rd District county attorneys. The probation agents throughout the 3rd District were also discussing it simultaneously. And in our courts, one of your judges, Judge Leahy, who's here, she was talking about it. And so we had this sort of three-pronged approach of this synergy of effort in the district of all of these people talking about why don't we have a veterans court. All of us judges were getting that from the people coming in front of us too. Frequently, about once a month, I'd have someone come in and say, do you have a veterans court? I'd be happy to participate. Sorry, we don't. So Judge Leahy asked, the probation department asked, the county attorneys asked, and so the courts decided we'd have a presentation. So we looked around the state. We looked to the 5th District, which is the Mankato and the rest of that district. They have a district-wide court. The other veterans courts in the state, Hennepin County, Ramsey County, Anoka County, they're county only, but they're big enough counties to have enough veterans to really make it effective. The 5th District is more similar to ours, and so we looked to them. Theirs isn't quite fully district-wide. They try to make it that way, but it's really Mankato-centric. We didn't want that. We said if we're going to have a veterans court, it's going to be for the whole district and not just the biggest city in this district. So where do I come in? Well, after the discussion came about and they asked for a presentation, I'm a veteran. And I served 31 years in the Navy and Navy Reserves as a JAG officer. Before that, I served 6 years in the Army National Guard. So I've got over 37 years of military service. And I suppose that made me the person to ask to spearhead this. And so our chief judge asked me to be the judge to lead this. And of course, that's what we do. Why a veterans court? And that's an important question. And I think it's a question we should all ask, because I don't think we should create something just for the sake of creating something. And why veterans courts work is very important to that question. Veterans courts work because veterans, unlike a lot of the people who come into our criminal justice system, are more educated than the typical criminal defendant we see. They have been through a military training program where they have demonstrated the ability to take on training, follow programming, and really develop personal self-discipline. Why are those important traits? Well, those are important traits because those are the kinds of things that we in the criminal justice world play off of or build upon to create success in probation. If we can take what a veteran already has as a foundation and we can springboard off of that, we can make them succeed with probation and, most importantly, never come back into our system, right? Make them a productive citizen again. And so that's really why veterans courts have been successful. And now there's not a lot of data on this because they've only been around for a decade, but the current research right now shows that veterans recidivism rate from veterans courts, those who people who graduate, is much less than the recidivism rate for your standard probationary programs. Not that they're a better program, they start with people who are already predisposed to some of the things that we do in probation. The other advantage to a veterans court over maybe a typical county drug court or your standard probation program is the pool of assets available that we have to tap into. Because, as your county attorney knows well, there's a limited source of funds for the people in our criminal justice system, for treatments, bed availability, programming, bodies to supervise. What we have available for veterans is the Veterans Administration. All of these veterans are entitled to a lot of different benefits. It can include drug treatment programming through the VA, mental health programming through the VA, housing assistance through the VA, all sorts of different programming that can help people put their troubled lifestyles behind them and become productive citizens again, all at no cost to the county or to the state because it's already funded. It's a different pool of money. And it's an asset that we need to tap into and take advantage of so that we can use what our limited resources for the rest of the community. Now, I don't want to sound like we do these veterans court presentations and veterans courts just because a veteran deserves more. That's not what we're saying at all. We're simply saying these are people who are already staged to be a success in the probationary program. So why not capitalize on that? What we do is we take people who are already going to be going through our criminal justice system, through our courts, through our probation, and we just segregate them to a different calendar on our court calendars so that we've got them grouped and we have them working together. And what is most important to the veterans court programs, we match them up with mentor volunteers from our community. We get those mentor volunteers from all sorts of places, the VFWs, the Legions, the Veterans Roundtable groups that are throughout our communities and our counties. Great resources of people who are more than willing to volunteer. And obviously, because they are also veterans, they start with a common bond. They start with a common allegiance, and that really helps in the success. And I think that's what we are finding in the Veterans Treatment Court programs is the mentorship aspect is probably the most critical component to the success of the program. And those are all volunteers. The 3rd District has decided we want to make this happen, and we want to provide it to every county. And so what we have proposed, and we started this, I think our bench voted on it about a year ago, a little over, that we would start implementing a veterans court. So the process was this. First, we started meeting. We started looking at other veterans courts around the state, started looking at other veterans programs around the country. We started watching webinars and learning everything we could about veterans courts. And once we did that, for probably longer than all of us wanted to, close to a year, we got the National Drug Court Association to send in some trainers specifically oriented toward veterans courts. And we had a 3-day training back in July from them about veterans courts. And most of us who have been participating in the meetings were able to attend. We got that training, which gave us a more in-depth understanding of the programs and what's successful and what's not. Also, the important part of taking that training is there is federal funding for these veterans courts. And that federal funding, the grants are up to a $500,000 grant for a 3 to 4 year period. From all of the people I've talked with, the typical grant is right around $250,000, which is a sizable amount of money because, frankly, the funding for a veterans court really doesn't need to be that much. And some veterans courts operate with no extra funding whatsoever. But this funding would cover any additional costs that we're going to incur. The other good news with that is there is a follow-on grant. That's another 3-year grant beyond that. So we could actually see the potential for up to 7 years of federal grant funding for our veterans court if that's what we wish to pursue. And so with that, I think I've probably given you a little bit of background. I do want to make sure I save some time for some questions. I know I was allotted 15 minutes. I will tell you that the last meeting like this I attended, I was allotted 15 minutes, and after 75 minutes we decided that was enough. I can go on for 75 minutes, but I'm not going to do that to you tonight. I do want to ask if you have questions. I'll entertain all of them. I also brought a little bit of information, a handout for you all, just to give you just a little bit more information how we plan on structuring this. We plan on dividing it, a western side and an eastern side of the district. We haven't decided on what counties will go where, but the fulcrum point is about Dodge County. They could either go west or they could go east. But we're trying to divide it up so that the population is pretty evenly balanced. With Olmsted County, there's the lion's share of the population on this side of the district. And then we'll have one judge assigned to each side of the district. Every county will be allowed to participate. We're going to design it so that the participants can come in person if they wish, or attend via video teleconferencing. All of our courtrooms are already equipped for that. It would require nothing but turning it on. So that makes it pretty simple for anyone who wishes to participate to be there. What I've heard anecdotally is from all of the Veterans Court programs that I've talked with and seen, they want to be there live. And people will drive to go to these sessions. It's pretty incredible how enthusiastic the veterans are to participate in this program. So with that, I'm going to give you a handout before I leave, but I want to take some questions first. And I'll entertain any question you got.
Commissioner Kavesi.
Yeah, when you continued on, you actually answered some of my questions, so thank you. So the idea is the judge travels to the court where the veteran is resident.
Well, we will.
Where the charges are being filed or whatever.
Steele or Olmsted?
Yeah, not quite. Yeah, so what we're going to do is instead we'll center one in Steele County. Now I'm chambered in Freeborn County, but I would travel to Steele County for those. Owatonna. And we've talked about Olmsted County, and as you all are probably well aware, Olmsted County has their space issues, so they're not so sure they can support it. So we're also talking to Dodge County. Dodge County is certainly on board with supporting it. So that's where we would center it.
Okay, so the judge travels there, and so does the person.
So does the participants, unless they want to do it via video teleconference.
Okay, all right, that helps. And have you found any impact on like the judge's caseload or the court scheduling? Because we recently lost a judge, and even with a replacement coming in, it creates a difference in the scheduling of cases.
I know you did, and I understand that that is certainly an issue for you. What I will tell you is that we are still working on how we're going to schedule it, but it will have some impact on the particular judge's calendar, who's going to handle that, but we're going to use an Olmsted judge to handle the eastern side, so your judges would actually be shipping some people down there. So it might relieve some of the workload here. And we do, as a district, have to look at how we can help Winona in all aspects, because you did lose a judge.
So are there certain judges that are going to have this extra training, or so to be a specialized judge perhaps, rather than any judge who gets any amount of training on it, or?
No, actually, there will be two of us designated.
Okay, so it's a special judge.
Yes,
Okay.
I will do the western side, Judge Chase will do the eastern side, but we're going to have our other judges, Judge Leahy has volunteered, to also assist us.
Okay.
So
That's-
that, you know.
I was just trying to get an idea
sometimes
on
we
the
go on
impact.
vacation.
Yeah, and on the federal grant, are there matching funds involved, do you know? And are there restrictions? Can you buy a judge? Can you? Well,
I will.
not exactly buy a
Came
judge,
out
but
right.
Can you
Got
fund
that?
a judge, yeah.
Let me go on record and saying you cannot buy a judge.
That's true.
I'm not sure what restrictions would be on it.
Okay.
But typically what those funds are used for is to pay the salary of a coordinator.
Pay the travel,
maybe
yeah.
an assistant coordinator, and maybe some of the collateral expenses like the extra drug and alcohol testing, those kind of
Yeah.
collateral expenses.
Because a lot of the other expenses come out of VA funding.
Almost all of it
Yeah.
can come out
Yeah.
of VA funding, because what it does, is, you know, it relieves the counties and the state of having to cover the cost of the treatment programs, because the VA is going to already cover that. So it's just a different pool of money, the federal government money, that's already there and available. We would be using our county VSOs, we would be using our state veterans justice officers. They would come to each of our sessions, so that we would have, and the VSOs and the VJOs, they are experts in what programming is available, so they can assist the judge and the probation officer and the particular defendant in finding the right programs that fit their needs. So, and most of those programs, what the data is telling us, that most of the people in the veterans courts can tap into the VA programs. Not all of them can, because some will have discharges, bad conduct discharges, other than honorable discharges, that may limit what benefits they can get from the VA. They may not be able to get any. Now, we have to establish what our parameters will be on who's going to be able to participate. We've discussed it. We haven't nailed that down completely yet. I'm advocating for at least going down as far as a bad conduct discharge, because the next worst, the only worst discharge is a dishonorable. Dishonorable discharge is essentially a discharge given to someone in the felony level of the military justice system. A bad conduct discharge is more like at the gross misdemeanor or misdemeanor level of the military justice system. And so bad conduct discharges, I think, they're still people that can warrant at least our assistance, if not the VA's assistance.
And we're really not voting on anything tonight.
We're not asking you to vote on
This is
anything.
really good information,
This is
though.
informational only. We want you to know what we're trying to set up for your county, for all of the counties. Let you know it's going to be available. Let you know our implementation time. We're expecting to kick this off approximately, I put on my little flyer for you, July 1st of next year. That's not set in stone. It's approximately sometime next summer. We don't know exactly. We'll have more information. Probably by February, we'll have a firm date secured.
Other questions? Commissioner Jacob?
So if you anticipate that the court would be possibly in Dodge County, then what's the responsibility on getting the veteran to Dodge County?
Sure. Well, what other counties have done, in particular the 5th District, the veterans can transport themselves. There are various shuttles available through our various county VSOs. There's some transportation available, and then there's the VTC, the video teleconferencing. So we've got some alternatives.
I must be missing something because any inmates that we have to transfer now require either a licensed peace officer or, I mean, we can't just have someone shuttle someone.
Yeah, and to be clear,
facility.
no, we're not talking about any inmates. If they are in custody, in the jail, we wouldn't be shuttling them. This would be people who are out on bail or out with a release on their own recognizance. People who are not, people sitting in jail, if they are eligible for the program, we'd use the VTC only for them. So they would be brought up to your local courtroom, and we'd communicate with them through the video teleconferencing. Most of them, though, most of the treatment court programs, they are heavily oriented toward post-conviction, post-plea stage, the probation side of things, where people are now out of jail and back in the community and working to restructure their life and get back on track. So we would see very few people who are actually in custody. We just see them at the very front end of their case. But they would soon be back into the community. Anyone who gets commits a crime that is going to lead to a long sentence probably wouldn't be qualifying for this program anyway.
Okay.
Other questions? Not having a lot of experience with the criminal justice system personally, which is a good thing.
Yes.
But, so we're familiar with drug court. So they are, they have a choice of going to prison or going into drug court. Is this similar with the Veterans Court? They've been convicted?
Sure.
Or-
It's very similar to drug court. It's patterned after the drug court, the treatment court program. And it's just a little more specific group. But it's essentially a drug court program.
Okay.
We are hoping to expand it beyond that because, frankly, what we see is our veterans, they have all sorts of issues. It's housing issues, it's mental health issues, it's employment issues, it's marital issues. And we have been talking as a district bench of trying to incorporate maybe our order for protection cases, our harassment restraining order cases, our domestic abuse cases, getting them into the programming too, and seeing if we can help with that aspect, and not just the drug and alcohol cases. But yes, and there are 3 stages we can handle it: pre-plea, post-plea, post-sentencing. So we may be able to use it as a diversion program. Rather than get a conviction, put them in a probation program. If they successfully complete it, no conviction whatsoever. If it doesn't fit that, maybe rather than a prison sentence, we refer them to this program. That might be post-plea, post-conviction, and if they succeed, then they're done. They've never had to go to prison. And then it might be somebody who's on probation, already convicted, they're a veteran, and rather than, if they have a probation violation, rather than send them to prison, send them into our program and see if we can make it work for them. So there's various avenues into this court that have been used throughout the country.
Well, again, we're not making a decision tonight, but we've had success with the drug court. I do have some concerns that, and hopefully our population isn't growing too exponentially, because I hear judges and attorneys and the legal system say they're overworked now, but you feel this will take some of the general burden away from court cases and just shift them into the veterans court versus a whole nother population?
Sure. I share your concern. We are very busy, and our dockets are getting busier. And so I will tell you, this wasn't my idea, but I'm on board with it because I think it can work. And I'm not to say that I want to discount this, but it's going to take a lot of extra time and a lot of extra work. And that's just what we're going to do. The value of a program like this is because the success rate is so high, if we can keep someone from recidivating, from committing new crimes, we cut our workload, right? Because right now it's about, for veterans graduates, it's only 8% recidivism rate. So less than 1 in 10 ever come back to us. That saves us work down the road. We never see them again. We never have to have a probation officer again for them, a county attorney prosecute them again. So it saves in that way. And it has that ripple effect because then our other community resources can be devoted toward the other people who aren't veterans that are going to come into our system. So will it save us time? I don't think it will, but it will certainly, I think, balance itself so that we're not going to lose time by it. I know at the front end, we're going to be doing a lot of extra hours, but that's the way it is with the startup of anything.
The judges don't get paid overtime, do you?
We don't, but we get paid just fine.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe
Commissioner Jacob.
have another question. So I'm looking at the amount of counties that you're grouping together here. Houston, Winona, Wabasha, Olmsted, Dodge, Mower, Freeborn, Waseca, Rice, Fillmore, and Steele. So how do you see the expense load and the workload between the multiple different counties? And, you know, just from previous experience, many times when my county gets in the same pool as Olmsted, Olmsted receives a lot of service and my county receives a share in the expense.
Thank you for that question. I come from a 2-judge county. I feel your pain, all right? And I don't want the 800-pound gorilla to get all of the benefits, okay? That's why we're doing a division. We are making sure that we can have our resources pooled more equally. And so your concern is, will Olmsted County get all of the attention?
Well, that's part of my concern. Probably more importantly is how are the expenses going to be divided amongst that many counties with that huge of differentiation in populations? How is that going to be fair?
Sure. How the 5th District has done it is they apportion by the number of participants from each county. So if Olmsted sends 100 and Winona sends 10, Winona pays 10% of what Olmsted pays. So it'll be proportional to the number of bodies involved in the program. If we even have to have any extra funding. Remember, a lot of this is already funded because we're going to be using the same probation officers, the same courtrooms, the same prosecutors, the same everything, same judges. Our added expenses are going to be pretty limited. And with federal funding, we should be able to cover any added expenses. So it's not really going to be the expenses that I would suggest you worry about. I mean, I know that's your job, right? Your job is to worry about the county funds, and I appreciate that. Really, the bigger worry is making sure that you get your fair share of the services. And we've been working very hard, very, very hard to make sure that every county is represented in this and is heard in this and is involved in this. Your VSO has been to every one of our meetings. He is there without fail. We hear from him. We try to make sure that we involve every county in this whole process. I handed out the paperwork because I wanted you to look at the last page to show you how we envision possibly dividing this up. And had I known you were going to have this up, I would have made a PowerPoint and brought it with me. But, you know, paper's pretty good too. So you see, that's how we envision dividing it. And again, as I pointed, Dodge County would be that fulcrum point. It could go either west or east. Logically, it should go west, just because that would balance out the population divide better. But because Dodge County's probation department is combined with Fillmore County and Olmsted County, it's kind of a hard divide. And so we're wrestling with that now. And we need, I think we need more buy-in from the DFO, Dodge Fillmore Olmsted Probation Department into the program to see if they can somehow carve out Dodge County for this program.
When you look at the numbers, it's very blatant. Olmsted is half of the whole eastern. But if you just watch the news and listen and know what's going on in Olmsted County, at some point maybe they'll have their own and leave the rest of us, the growth and exponential. And with growth comes, a lot of other, not all good things come out of the extreme growth that they're experiencing and such. So Olmsted, Rochester is just going to be the mecca of southeast Minnesota. We all know that. And so, yeah.
Well, and again, bringing me back to an earlier point, we did not want this to be an Olmsted program. We wanted this to be a third district program. The impetus for this came from outside of Olmsted. One of your local judges, half of the probation officers on the western side of this district have been clamoring for it. And the Olmsted County Attorney too. Though that's, I'm not saying they're not involved and they're not interested, but I'm saying that if we do this, and we are going to do this, it is going to be a district-wide program. It's not going to favor one county over another. We're going to make sure anybody and everybody who's eligible and wants to participate can do so. Our county attorneys will be instrumental in recommending people to the program. So, and we give them that authority. That's their call. They get to decide, do I want this defendant in that program or do I want him in the regular program? That's how it will work. So Winona County will certainly get fair treatment in a program like this.
Commissioner Tedeschi.
I just have one other question. I'm looking at the team composition on this handout.
And there's a few typos in there. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, yeah. The Veteran Services Officer, that's county staff.
That's right. And I have my secretary actually made that, said Veterans Administration. That should have been a line down with the VJO.
And the Veterans Justice Outreach, that's a special person.
The Veterans Justice Outreach, that's the Veterans Administration person.
Okay.
And they come from the VA in Minneapolis. And this is part of their job.
So they know the resources.
They are like the county VSO. They are the state VJO. They are tasked with helping us get these things going. They are tasked with helping us identify who should be in the program and what kind of benefits and treatment they are eligible for and should get into. So they are a tool in our toolbox. And maybe that's the expression I want to use. This all becomes extra tools in the toolbox for your local probation officers to say, these are the extra things we can do with this person because there's this federal pool of money we can tap into.
Right, but when I look at this group, it's very similar to a drug court makeup. So what I was thinking is that if you already have a drug court makeup, does it work the other way, that if you send the Veteran Justice Outreach and the Veteran Services Officer to the drug court as a participant when that person's issues, when they have a team meeting and all of that, does that not work the same? I mean, is that a similar program without being called a Veterans Court, just for that? For the drug and substance abuse.
What we have found is when you group like people together, veterans together as a group, and you add in the veteran mentor component, there's greater success than in a regular treatment court. And
could you do that with a drug court program now?
Could you? I would say...
just add those extra people to the drug court is what I'm saying.
I would say you could try, but again, because...
Well, it would complicate maybe the regular...
It would, and that's part of the reason why we're looking at a district-wide program, because it wouldn't pay a VJO to come down to Minneapolis for one person who's in our drug court, who's a veteran. But if we put a whole bunch together and we've got that momentum, we've got that inertia of people, we're going to get the VJOs.
Yeah.
Well, then we can rely on our county VSOs on the rest of the days to help us. And so it's just because by grouping them, we can get more services, more assistance.
This
and
program would be optional to the vet anyway.
totally optional,
Right.
just
They
like the
could-
drug
They
court.
could go one way or this way. And I honestly don't know if we've had any veterans come through the drug court. If we do, we would have our Veteran Services Officer on hand as a resource.
Sure, yeah,
Yeah.
and I'll tell you right now, Fillmore County, they're doing this sort of on their own.
They're starting it that way.
They are just identifying veterans and they're working, and God bless them for doing it. They are doing a great job, but they can't hit all the wickets that we could do as a district-wide program because we'll be bringing in all of the professionals right there for each of the court hearings. So I know we're running out of time, and I'm sorry about that.
No, I was trying to figure out how
I
it
told you I could go on forever.
Yeah, no, this is fine. I just was trying to figure out how it works. And so even though maybe drug court doesn't know if a person is a vet, the Veteran Services Officer knows every vet that comes into the law enforcement system, so.
Just about.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to say that is an absolute.
Going the other way, yeah.
And we've had veterans in our drug courts, and we've used the VA system, and so it is an alternative.
Okay.
It's just not quite as efficient.
Okay, I just was curious how these things add up, or, yeah.
Attorney Sonneman.
I just wanted to address your question, Commissioner Kavesi, just to point out a couple things. First of all, we have, in my office, we have identified people who are veterans and tried to address their issues as we prosecute their case. So it's kind of a ad hoc, I guess, veterans process. But the National Drug Court, they kind of split off about, 10 years ago, about the same time they started looking at veterans courts. And so there's a totally separate veterans court organization, national organization that also benefits from all the research that was done on drug courts. And we did explore in our early discussions, and we continue to talk about in the Winona County Treatment Court, now we're called, about the possibility of could we incorporate a veteran? But I think, as Judge Luning has pointed out very, very well, it's really you have to have a different approach. It's like some counties have DWI courts because you deal with people with alcohol abuse sometimes differently than other substance abuse. So I think a lot of that's already been explored, and
I was just curious how,
focus
yeah.
is that veterans courts can be so much more effective when you focus on the veterans.
Thanks for that help.
Commissioner Jacob, you had a.
Yeah, so you stated that eventually ultimately it would not be grant funded. It would be upfront for up to, you said, 7 years. So I'm not, know if I.
Sure, yeah, I can't guarantee any of it, but that's currently what has been happening. And if you saw in the news just recently, the funding for these programs in the federal level has just gone up, I think last week or so. So there's even more funding and more support and more push for us to do this.
So I haven't got to my question yet.
Yes.
So my question would be, what would Winona County's financial responsibility be after federal funds expire?
That's hard to say because I don't know what our ultimate budget is going to be. But to keep in mind, much of that is already funded because you're already funding the probation officers to handle the same bodies that would be in your program anyway. We're just dividing them out into a different docket. So it's hard to really break it down. But there are expenses that come with a specialty court, like a coordinator and such. As you'll see, most veterans courts, they have a fee schedule that they charge people to participate in the program. And that's designed to reduce a lot of the expenses. So, and a number of the veterans courts throughout the country are now having funding come through foundations. because many communities like the programs, don't want to lose the programs. They set up foundations. The foundations take in the money and get funding. So it defers a lot of the cost from the counties. Can I say with 100% certainty it will never cost the county a dime? I can't. But I can tell you that it is a shared expense throughout the 11 counties, again, proportionally to the number of people involved. So Winona County would not take on the lion's share of the expense, and the better way to look at it is you would share it with a bigger pool, all 11 counties rather than just one county. So it's a way to defer the cost too.
And well, less people, oh, excuse me.
I'm still on the
Go
same
ahead.
question. When you talk about a regional coordinator, that takes on the life of another full-time employee. Who does that coordinator belong to? Is that one of the counties, all the counties? Is that a new, like its
It
own
would
level of
be-
government, or where does that come in?
No, that would be a coordinator. It would essentially be a district wide employee. So the third judicial district would probably take on that person. I look at that person as another resource because, you know, a good part of any of our administration of justice is coordination. And the better coordination, the more efficient, the more productive we can be. And so, you know, they will cost money, but they also save money because we free up our probation officers to do probation officer work rather than coordination work.
And District 3 is all the counties.
All of those counties that I have on that page there.
Okay.
No, I just had a question following Commissioner Jacob. Well, we may have, you know, the same numbers coming into the program on the front end. The recidivism rates you said are low, so in some ways, if we're paying for people to come into the program, paying that way, we're not paying again for reoffenders and for all of the treatment and services that a reoffender needs. Sometimes reoffenders get worse, you know, the charges get more serious and you have
I know that well.
more resources going into rehabilitation or whatever. So, you know, you're continually having people coming in perhaps because crime is there, but you're not having people recycling through the system by reoffending.
And that's, I appreciate that point. That's a point we try to put numbers on that, but it's really hard to quantify all of the savings we get by getting people out of the system and making them a productive citizen. Not only are they no longer bogging down our system, but they're paying taxes and they're contributing in other ways. So
Their families are back together and they're no longer in foster care. And
that's really what it's all about. We're trying to help our communities.
So one last thought maybe is that we are the third judicial district, and there's many districts throughout. So do you, the people above you, do they support this 100%?
They do. In fact, as I noted, I was tasked with this by our chief judge of the third judicial district. The chief justice of the Minnesota Supreme Court, Justice Gilday, she is pushing hard. It's her goal to make sure that we have a specialty court in every county in this state before she's done. That's one of her big goals because she really believes in it. So we have, not only do we have support from the top, we have insistence from the top that we make these things happen.
Just have them put money at the top too.
Right.
I mean, judges and
I'm with
courts like, you know, they like a lot of things. I know Justice Galita would like a lot of other things in our courts here too, but
Right.
she's got to come with the money too, and then we'll talk. You know.
I agree. We do have to talk to our legislature about funding this third branch of government. It's important.
Right. It can't be local property tax.
It can't be. No,
Thank
it's
you.
got to be
We
more.
agree. We agree on that. Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all for having me. I do appreciate coming. I will be happy to come back and give you updates if we have any major developments. I'll keep you informed through your VSO and however else I can get the word to you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, moving on to 8.2, approval of the resolution for preliminary levy. Mr. Fritz.
Based on discussions at the previous work sessions, we put in the packet a preliminary tax levy with a 4% increase. And that's what's on the board agenda.
Discussion. Commissioner Olson.
Yeah, in a memo you sent out this week, you kind of indicated that the 4% was, at least at this point, before we talk about, I guess we got a couple of requests from Karen. We have a request from the sheriff, which aren't included in this.
From the recorder.
And then we also have, from the recorder. And then we have some proposals that Steve had thrown out there.
Correct.
And your memo was kind of saying that this 4%, that you would like something a little bit higher to give us a better place to start from.
Yeah, I think it's correct. The 4%, I guess the way I was looking at it is we still have a deficit, even after we take into account reduction in health insurance, the 4% increase, and then finance and administration and departments have gone through and we're still fine-tuning the budget and finding different things. The county board made a change to the capital program, for instance, which reduced the budget about $80,000, so that impacted the deficit. There were some other line items that Pat and I have gone through and identified that could be up or down depending on revenues and better estimates and more information. So at this point, we're estimating that if you take into consideration the $87,000 we're talking about at the working session today, we'd be down around $662,000 in terms of our deficit right now. If you take that 80,000 out, it's 80,000 higher. That's kind of where we're at. The problem that I see in the current recommendation is that almost 46% of our budget is personnel and labor related, so personnel and benefits. That increased this year, even with the reduction in health insurance, down to even with that zero increase. That increased to about 4.38%. The tax levy represents only 36.22% of the entire budget. If you increase that 4%, you're increasing the levy at 4%, which is only 36% of the budget, and you're increasing personnel 4.38%, which is 45% of the budget. So you're losing ground. And so even though buried in that, it's kind of hard to follow, but buried in that deficit is the fact that we're not even covering the labor increase that we would have from year to year. So you're basically creating a situation where every year, if you don't meet that labor increase, you're not good. You're just digging a bigger hole. So from my perspective, I recommended that in order to cover that labor increase, we need approximately a 5.5% tax increase. Now that said, we still need to look at that list of wants from the departments, which include those positions, and also the list that Commissioner Jacob brought up, and possibly other options in terms of things we might be able to reduce to continue to work away at that deficit one direction or the other. Obviously, if you increase the tax rate to 5.5% from 4%, your deficit drops another couple $100,000. So you're down in that $500,000 range. But then you still have some programs you might want to add, and you have some things you might want to get rid of in terms of not get rid of, but in terms of not do, in this budget. And that needs to be worked out. But we can't do that in the time frame that we have with the preliminary budget or the preliminary tax levy, which has to be approved by the end of the month. So my recommendation is that I think the 4% is, I hate looking at a tax increase, but the structure of our budget, because the tax levy is such I won't call it a small portion, but it's only 36% of the entire budget, there's an adverse effect on that, a bigger effect on that when you're trying to cover things like 45% or 46%, which is personnel. So I just don't think that, I think the 4% would move us backwards. We were making some progress, I think, toward getting to a balanced budget. And I know it's painful, from a tax increase standpoint, But I think if we don't do it, we may create a situation where we continue to build up deficits and in 3 or 4 or 5 years have to have a large increase to make the difference. Because the thing that's allowing us right now to continue this way is that we have a reserve. Once that reserve gets to a point where we can't operate effectively, which could be, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, depending on how, each budget comes out, we won't have that cushion. And then the only way to resolve that would be either raise taxes substantially or cut services substantially. And I don't think that moving along at 4%, unfortunately this year, is going to help us get to a more even playing field along where we can actually sustain it from year to year. It's going to continue, it's going to make the headwind bigger, if that makes sense. So that's kind of my summation of that memo.
Commissioner Kavesi.
Yeah, that was pretty clear in here, in the memo. The other issue that comes to mind is the perception of the preliminary levy. Now, we have tended to set a preliminary levy and not necessarily drop it by much, if at all. That's my recollection of the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So when the public sees the preliminary levy, they've started to translate that as, okay, that's how much it's going to go up. And some people may even start budgeting, who knows. But what the preliminary levy really is a ceiling that gives us the additional time to look at both the issues that Commissioner Olson was pointing out, because one is Commissioner Jacobs' list, and one is, reconsideration or more consideration of the budget requests that we've had. So if we set a ceiling higher than 4% and then drop back to 4%, the timing is different. We set the ceiling now and the drop back is in December. Give people a Christmas present, right? I don't know. I'm just saying, I think we need to set something higher than 4% so that we can have a chance to realistically review what are the real needs, whether they're plus or minus. Some may come in, if you review a program, you may realize it needs more resources than what's already budgeted, or you may realize it needs less, or it doesn't even need to be there at all. And that's, what we still need to do.
One other piece of information, the board had asked for we kind of did a quick back of the napkin calculation on what the tax increase would have been for each individual house and so forth. Mm-hmm. I think I threw out a number of like $18 a house. I took the information we got from the assessor last year, and we had done a projection, and at 4%, the impact on a residential non-homestead at $16. On land, let's take a farm homestead, it's $84. If you're looking at a farm non-homestead, it's $160. Commercials, $150,000 commercials, $44. So,
in the memo.
Yeah, it's in the memo, yeah. And so I want to give you some perspective on even though we're talking about the 4% tax rate, you need to kind of think about what it means per property.
It's tiny.
And so I put that in there so you could get some perspective, and maybe that would be helpful. And then what Commissioner Kavesi was saying is true. The kind of the basic concept of the preliminary levy is to create a ceiling and then to give you time to actually work on those things that are more meaty, like looking at program review, like deciding how much reserve you want to spend this year, and putting it all together in a package, and then eventually passing that, by the end of the year. When you set the rate so low, you have no choice but to either use reserves or cut programs. And so and that's certainly a position the board can take, but that's just, I like just pointing that out so that I think it limits your ability to work on this issue collectively for the next couple months.
Commissioner Palmer.
Several times we've mentioned on how we set the preliminary levy and having more time. Well, we're not going to get more time. I mean, we're going to set the preliminary and then we're going to set the final. It doesn't provide any additional time to review anything. we have to take the time that we require to view what we have to view. So, I mean, I do view the 5% as a not to exceed, cannot exceed by law. Not thrilled about it, but I would go along with it and see what we can do in our further review. But yeah, I think we do need to take the time to do a good job.
Yeah, we have working sessions scheduled for October
Right.
and November.
October 9th, and then
Yeah.
whatever we need after that. yeah.
But where I'm coming from is we had a couple of sessions, but we have not, I don't think we made any very firm decisions at all.
No.
And so I think what we have to do is develop consensus for or against things and start ticking them off and checking them off. Yeah, and if we're going to deal with an issue, do it and be done with it and move on. And we haven't done any of that yet.
Commissioner Olson.
Just to clarify what you just said, was it 5.5% or 5%?
What were you asking for, Ken?
5.5.
Yeah, that.
That? Okay.
As a preliminary not to exceed.
Commissioner Jacob.
So, two options that we just stated in black and white. Either, I guess three, including tax increase, or use revenues, or cut programs, or a combination of using revenues, or using reserves and cutting programs. To me, it's making a commitment to the taxpayer right up front that we're dedicated to seriously looking at every option we can to keep taxes low by setting a lower preliminary levy. So I'm not ready to support a 5.5. I'm ready to dig in and look at every one of those items on that list and see what we can get down to.
Well, I would agree with Commissioner Jacob. I cannot accept the premise that we inevitably have to keep increasing taxes. It's just not within my personal nature. And knocking door to door, I have not had one person ask me to raise their taxes. I'm sorry, one gentleman asked me to raise the taxes if it would be dedicated to roads and bridges. And I said, when counties raise property taxes, we cannot, to my knowledge, we can't dedicate it to a one particular, it goes into the general fund. Everybody is, in the rural areas is saying that, enough is enough. So I can't support that we can't somehow reduce expenditures or somehow increase revenues and use reserves and a combination of efforts. So no, I would not support even a 4%.
I guess what,
Commissioner Palmer.
yeah, I was on the line a little longer. Yeah,
That's okay. Nope, that's okay.
I guess what I would say is, whether we set the preliminary not to exceed at 5.5 or 4%, I think that every board member is going to do their work to try to come up with a better solution than just laying it out there at 5.5%. It's my hope that we can bring it down to a more reasonable level. We're not assured that we're going to reach that level. I will try. I'm certainly willing to compromise on some things. But I don't know that it does any harm right now at the 5.5, given the fact that I think we'll all work to do a better job on it.
Commissioner Kavesi.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think setting it at 5.5 sends any message other than that we are all committed to reviewing all of our options seriously and continuously, because we're committed to that. We have more working sessions. We're all still looking for other solutions and other issues. I do have people at the door asking for services, particularly in the area of substance and alcohol abuse. Resources like drug court are highly discussed, and they don't always have a name for it, but they really want help in a lot of areas. And I have had people say they would pay more taxes if they had a voice in the services. And so I think that's what we are doing when we review the when we continue to review the options, obviously after we've set the preliminary levy, that we don't stop working and, say that's it. So I could support the 5.5 as a ceiling and the further commitment that we all have to our constituents and to each other for continual review. I would also like to ask one public service favor, I guess, is that any discussion, any media discussion, perhaps reflect again the option that this is a ceiling, or the idea that this is a ceiling and it's not set in stone, to help people with that perception.
Commissioner Olson.
And Jen, maybe you can clarify for me, if let's just say we did a 0%, does that mean that the amount of money that the tax levy put toward roads and bridges last year would be the same as next year?
Well, the tax levy is a dollar amount, so it doesn't,
Right.
I mean, even though it's,
But-
so it doesn't
Well,
change.
we allocate so much towards highways.
Yeah, I don't think,
Could be proportion different.
yeah, you could move it around. I mean, it's proportion different.
Well, we're not-
Right now, we've been, I guess what I'm trying to say is the number that's in the budget for the tax levy for the road and bridge, let's say the road and bridge needed some additional funds in there to cover that year's expenses. We have a reserve in road and bridge, which is part of our bigger reserve, and that's really kind of what you're drawing down. So Pat might not change that particular property tax allocation for the road and bridge. It would just be over the general fund.
But we know that traditionally to pave a road next year is going to cost more than it did this year. Traditionally, it goes up, inflationary costs and everything. So if we do not put more money in our budget to cover those costs, and we instead supplant it with our half-cent sales tax, which is what you're not supposed to do,
Well,
we are in violation of the half-cent sales tax.
No, we're not doing that because the half-cent sales tax is going to roads that we would not necessarily have done. So, I mean, you could switch them around and say this one,
They're
this
going
one
for
first or
roads
this one
that are
last.
on the priority scale of the roads that need to be done first. That's how that's how
yeah.
we're looking at it. Well, the roads that
Project
don't
list.
necessarily need to be done, but they're the
Well, then
top
we might not
priority
be able to
road.
do, they're not always, first off, we get funding for some roads from the state,
Yep, I
right?
know.
So those aren't in the same bucket. It's only the roads where we have to pay out of pocket. So if the county would normally pay out of pocket, we only have limited funds. So those roads we wouldn't get to them. Then we'd get to them eventually, but we wouldn't get to them in any near term.
I will support a 5.5% preliminary budget request.
I just wanted to,
Make the motion.
I did want to mention one thing as I'm looking through these numbers. Having a little difficulty on the August 29th budget submission. It shows that we had a levy of $18,058,907.
Sir, is that in this packet or?
No, it's
past
the
that?
August
What?
29th
Yeah,
package.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and so if we were to increase 4%, that would raise the levy by $737,000,
Yeah.
which would bring you to 18.7 or 8. I'm seeing a net levy that you've calculated under 4% at 19.2. Seems like it's off by about $350,000 or $400,000.
You're talking about the one from yesterday where we did the forecast?
No, I'm talking
What are you
about,
talking about?
I'm talking about your packet,
Page 51 of the,
the August
Oh,
29th
the
packet.
actual- You're talking about, no, I understand that, but are you talking about the projection in there or the projection, because we didn't have a 4%
No,
in
I'm
there.
talking about-
You're talking now, right?
I'm talking the actual levy that you show for 2018, which I believe is $18,058,000.
It's 18,425,989.
Well, why does it say 18?
I think that number there, because our levy is broken out into different areas, it's broken out to levy, disparity aid, aid, and another aid. There's also, so levy is made up of like 4 different numbers.
we got 19.1 here.
And that's
Well, I think the one you want to look at, so first off, the budget, I mean, I'm not saying that the levy changes, but But our budget numbers do change over time because we end up fixing things, finding errors, things like that. So really you need to look at the levy that Pat has in tonight's packet. That will give you the exact levy number and the 4% increase.
So that's about 350,000 more than what you suggest the levy is in 2018 in your
Back when
August.
we were originally, whatever that document, I don't know the document yet.
I mean, levies don't change in the middle of the
No,
year.
I'm not saying they are, but I'm saying that there's a good, and I don't have the document in front of me, so I
Okay.
can't really tell what happened, but my hunch would be that something wasn't picked up in there that Pat just mentioned, and therefore that number's probably low.
Because there's a part of that's just property levy, then we get, basically what it is then we get money back from the state, because the levy is a dollar amount that and I wish Sandra would be here to explain it a little bit more, but she basically tells this is what the state, the property levy is gonna be. There's an assessment against all the property taxes. When that money is collected, we have to turn some of that money into the state. The state turns around and actually pays back to us
It's weird.
different levies that actually make up the levy that we're actually stating.
So we do it, but I'm saying, it looks to me like in the August 29th document, that's net levy compared to the current document, which is net levy.
Yeah, and I'm suggesting that,
5.5, which would be more than
Right.
tonight's packet,
I think
page
what it
51.
is in that one document where the number was picked up at 18,000,000.
58,000.
58,000. The disparity aid, the conservation aid, and ag credit aid were not actually included in that number to bring the levy to the full amount that we're actually, is the county levy.
I can tell you what happened, Jim.
But we set so let me ask you the question.
That number
In
came.
last year's net levy document, what number did we have?
It's 18.4.
18,425.99.
What happened there is in our budget, in our budget, there's different codes. Some are
Okay.
property tax.
Okay.
When you run a property tax number, you pick up the property tax. What didn't get included in there is the three things that Pat said, the ag credit, whatever that other one, those other two were. They're not called property tax. They're called three different things. So that's a.
But we levy for them.
Yeah, we levy for them. But the document there obviously picked up only one of them. It picked up the bulk one, the big one, not the other three that don't have a property tax as a
So,
aid.
I mean, in the future,
Yeah.
hopefully the folks will be able to deal with apples and apples.
Yeah, well, that's something that.
That's not
yeah.
what this is.
No, I understand. And when I put that out, I'm sure it's a mistake that we didn't catch.
Okay.
And actually what it is years ago, we used to put just only property taxes, and then when we would do our audit, we would actually have to move these numbers, because we would actually get money, and we'd have no budget in a certain line item, but we would get the money from the state. So the property levy, again, comes from various sources, and it's not just the one with property tax. It's basically, it's kind of like really odd.
The statements we send out, and we put Winona County on it, and there's city, county, school district, special things. Bottom line,
Those that's 18.4, and they come right from the property tax preliminary levy not the preliminary, it would be the final levy.
Final levy that
you
we
actually
set.
yes,
Right,
absolutely.
right.
That
So
number is
today-
picked
but
up in our
today-
reporting and,
so when you say you want 5.5, what is that figure?
Oh,
It's
it's-
higher than 19.1.
Calculated.
It's 20, 19,439,
418.
Oh, whoa.
wait,
Oh,
19,
with the 5.5%? Okay. The whole point I was trying to make is that I wasn't just trying to look for a mistake. I was trying to figure something out here. And that is that since 2009, Winona County's levy at the higher number that you're talking about is up a total of 4% since 2009. So,
That's with the proposed levy, right?
No.
Oh, total? Okay.
no.
Because I think last time we said.
No, because last time I said it was only up a point and a half. But, so it looks like it's been up 4% since 2009,
Right.
our net levy. So,
and
like I said, I mean-
my farmers are getting a penny, Commissioner Jacob, you'd know this better than I, a penny a bushel subsidy?
corn and
Corn? Where did I read? residents
I don't participate in the subsidies.
subsidies, but I mean, it's obnoxiously,
Yeah, that's for
number
corn.
For corn.
And that's the special subsidy for the tariffs, to make up for the tariffs.
A penny, a
What
penny.
about the beans?
It's different.
That's different. And again, I never grew up with commodities, and I don't do commodities, so I don't follow it as closely maybe as some of my neighbors do. But again, my neighbors, my friends, my constituents are losing money. So, I mean, to ask them for even to give us that penny is kind of hard to ask.
Well, I'm reasonably certain that we're all interested in doing the best we can to lower the levy from the 5.5. I'm certainly willing to try.
Is that a motion?
I think there's a motion and a second already been made.
No.
No?
Oh, didn't I?
I said that I would support your motion.
Right.
Oh, did I make the motion?
No, I do not have a motion on the table.
I would move to set the do not exceed preliminary levy at 5.5%.
I will second that.
We do have a motion to set the preliminary maximum not to exceed
Right.
levy, property tax levy at 5.5 for the year 2019, made by Commissioner Pomeroy, second by Commissioner Olson. Any further discussion? Commissioner Olson.
I just want to point out one thing as I sit here tonight as we had this discussion, and I'm looking at the ceiling tile over in the side of the room, and I realize we have sold this building. But I realize that we've talked about a roof for this building for years, and I think to myself as a county taxpayer and as a commissioner, my responsibility to maintain county buildings. And we're talking about perhaps draconian cuts to get to a 0%, to eliminate programs and employees, and we're failing to even maintain our buildings, and that disappoints me. And I don't like that responsibility to go to the wayside, so I just want to point that out.
Okay, the motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Nay. Passes 3-2. All right, I think we're at the end of our agenda. Commissioner Kavesi, you had a couple of announcements?
Oh, yeah, just some activities coming up. The Primary Prevention Project is holding a community conversation on the 22nd of October at the Minnesota State College Southeast. That's the old tech college. It'll be in the auditorium. They're having a gathering at 6, and at 6:30 they're having a speaker. Chuck Derry is coming and his topic is respect and stopping sexual and domestic violence. Chuck is from the Gender Violence Institute, and we have a local panel coming in to deal with some of the other discussion. So it should be a lively evening. October is Prevent Domestic and Sexual Violence Month. So during this month, I have purple ribbons. If anybody wants a purple ribbon, that's a way to show support. And another way is to come out to this program on the 22nd. October 10th is Walk Bike to School, so you need to be helping with that if you can, watching out for kids on bikes and scooters and walking, although they will have chaperones, obviously. But October 10th, there should be events going on in every school district in the county, from what I heard. So it's a pretty popular event, so get your helmets on and ride your bikes with the kids.
Commissioner Jacob.
I just want to remind people of the annual 4-H Fall Harvest Auction. It's up at the Winona County Fairgrounds. That's this Sunday, September the 30th. So great opportunity to support a great cause.
You covered it for me. Thank you. Yes, it is a major fundraiser for them to support the youth activities. So, yes, be there. Any other business to be for the county board tonight? Okay.
Second.
Motion made to adjourn by Commissioner Olson, second by Commissioner Jacob. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Adjourn. Thank you.